Make sure y'all stay on point with the puncher's point. What is good, y'all? Welcome back to the Puncher's Point. We are fresh off of the Junto Nakatani versus Ryosuke Nishida fight. Junto Nakatani, 31-0, 24 knockouts. He defeats Nishida, and now he retains his WBC belt, but he also becomes the new IBF champion at 118 pounds. So with that being said, we're going to talk about this fight. We're going to dive into the fight breakdowns and what's next for Junto Nakatani. However, overall, I do want to say this. This is Junto Nakatani's fifth straight KO, and Junto Nakatani is on a roll. I mean, if there were any doubts about him being a pound for pound top 10 fighter, there shouldn't be any now. If there were any doubts about him being a pound for pound top 5 fighter, we better start having that conversation. So with that being said, we're going to kick right into it with the fight strategy grades. First of all, here's what I will say. What I liked about Junto Nakatani was one of the strengths I had for him was be the aggressor. And in this fight, he was, but I also said I wanted him to be a lot more aggressive. And in this fight, I believe he was the aggressor for most of the fight, but there were some times where he also let his foot off the gas, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. I will say this, the first round when it was an inside fight, and when I looked at the first round, I noticed that Junto Nakatani, he was relying a lot on the right. And that shocked me because Junto Nakatani is that type of guy that really relies on that left straight. I mean, we talked about how he would basically use that right jab and then he would follow with the left straight. Guys would get rocked, they would get hurt, and he would take over from there. But Junto Nakatani, what I really liked about him is when I meant be more aggressive, he did that in the first round. And those uppercuts, I mean, those uppercuts were brutal, and you could tell Nishida could not handle them correctly. He could not handle them well. Every single time he got hit with those uppercuts, he had to kind of reset and regroup. And I believe that Junto Nakatani realized that those uppercuts were going to be a problem very, very early into this fight, and he kept it going all the way until the fight was stopped in the sixth. As far as Nishida, he was using his jab in that first round. He was also going to the body as well. For the first round, it was basically an inside fight, but I believe because Junto was more aggressive, he took over that round. And round two came, and Junto started using that left hook. Now, now he started off early with that right hand, but then he incorporated that left hook, and both hooks, it was a problem for Nishida. Nishida, I think, from round one, could tell that the power advantage was on Junto Nakatani's side, and that was going to be something that he was going to have to deal with the entire fight. And I believe that as the fight progressed, Junto Nakatani just started getting a lot more versatile. And what I really liked about Junto Nakatani was one of the other keys or one of the weaknesses I had was he had the footwork, he had the head movement, but he didn't use it as much. And in this fight, he incorporated that. He moved around the ring as much as he possibly can. He was attacking and moving around the ring. When Nishida would come at him and try to brawl, he would use some head movement, and that was what I wanted to see from Junto Nakatani. And he did it absolutely very, very well. These are the tools that he has, but he just doesn't use a lot. And in this fight, I believe that he really did show that he could use his head movement, he can use his footwork, and this was as complete as Junto Nakatani as I have ever seen. Now, as you get into the third round, this is where the little bug started showing on the eye of Ryosuke Nishida. I believe it was something that was definitely affecting him from the beginning of the fight, but round three is really when it became a problem. You start seeing the eye swelling up. However, because of that, round three, I gave that to Nishida, and I'm gonna say this. The reason why I gave that round to Nishida, despite the mouse on the eye, was because I believe that when round three came, Nishida realized that there was a sense of urgency and he had to be the aggressor. And in round three, he became aggressive. He was really pushing that pace. He was really pushing Junto Nakatani back. And in my opinion, what I think he did very, very well, which I wish he could have continued in this fight, he was using his left straights and he was using the hooks. And for me, Nishida kind of backed away from that after round three. After round three, it was all Junto Nakatani from there. Junto Nakatani just became more aggressive, more versatile, and he just took over. And then that eye, obviously, it would still affect Nishida because he couldn't see out of it. I mean, that eye was shut as it could possibly be. And I can't blame the doctors for stopping it in the sixth round because Junto Nakatani just went in there and dominated him. After that round three, after that one round that Nishida won, he just dominated him. I only had Nishida winning one round. And then from there, I just think Junto Nakatani controlled this entire fight. What I wanted to see from Nishida, I wanted to see head movement and footwork, and I don't think he really showed that. I said that he had the better footwork. He had the better head movement than Junto Nakatani. However, in this fight, you wouldn't have guessed it. You would have saw the way Junto was moving his head, the way he was using his footwork. You wouldn't have guessed Nishida had the better head movement and footwork. And maybe I was wrong about that. Maybe I was wrong about that, that Nishida had the better footwork and the better head movement because in this fight, it just didn't show. Now, with all that being said, what would be the strategy for this? Well, Junto was very aggressive. Um, he was very good with I wish he could have used feints a little bit more, but overall he was the aggressor. He was doing very, very well with just taking over the fight, getting to the inside. There were even times where he was targeting the body. So for me, as far as Junto, I think he did what he had to do to win this fight, and I think he looked pretty complete. Nishida, in my opinion, he was very, very lackluster, and maybe that was the competition. Maybe that was the competition of Junto Nakatani, and he couldn't handle. So for me, I'm gonna give the strategy a 7. I think Junto did what he was supposed to do. I think the power was again overwhelming for Nishida, and he couldn't handle it. And that was one thing that I predicted in the prediction episode that the power was going to be too much for him to handle. And even if he did the right things, once he felt that power, it was going to be a problem. So for me, I'm gonna give the strategy a 7. Now, as far as the excitement, what would I give it? I'm not gonna lie, it was a decently exciting fight. Am I gonna say it was one of the best or one of the most exciting fights this year? Absolutely not. But what I will say, it was an exciting fight. And for me, I'm gonna give the excitement, I'm gonna give it a 7.5. And the reason why I say that is because Junto Nakatani was really pushing that action. And despite the eye shutting for Ryosuke Nishida, he still tried to put up as best of a fight as he could. Even though some of the tools that he has, I wish he used, he wasn't really using them to his best ability. I mean, you can tell he wasn't really using his combos. He wasn't going to the end and staying on the inside and popping out. I will say this, though, there were times where he was going to the inside targeting that body, but what made it such an exciting fight is Nishida didn't quit. You know, eventually the fight got stopped because of that eye. And in my opinion, once the corner looked at that, they didn't want to continue with that fight, and understandably so, because the eye was just shut. There was nothing else he could do with that. So for me, I think it was an exciting fight because we saw Junto Nakatani pushing the pace, but we also saw Nishida trying to engage in action as well. But I'm not going to give it anywhere more than a 7.5 because it wasn't really competitive at all. So for me, as far as excitement, I'm gonna give that a 7.5. Now, the stakes. Well, here's the thing. I've been stressing and stressing and stressing about guys like Naoya Inoue and Junto Nakatani, how top rank in their management crews, they have to start giving them some good fights, some good title fights. And David Quaylar, the last fight was not what I was expecting. But when you put in another champion like Nishida and you put the WBC and the IBF titles together, that has some big stakes to it, especially when you have two Japanese fighters who are undefeated in Japan. To me, those are big stakes. So for me, if you're asking me what the stakes are going to be for this fight, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to give it an 8.5 because I've been asking for big fights with Junto Nakatani for a very, very long time, and this was the fight that I wanted to see. However, there's bigger fights to be made. And I believe that this is a start. I believe from here, there's only so many fights that you can make. I don't want to keep on seeing Junto Nakatani fight guys who are undefeated but have records where the other guys were negative records or they were fighting no names. I want to see Junto Nakatani start fighting guys like I want to see him start fighting guys like Takai or fighting guys like Sasumi. Those are the guys I want to see him start fighting. Or if he wants to move up, there's only one guy in that division who's undisputed at the division above, and that's Naoya Inoue. These are the fights that I want to start seeing. Maybe Jesse Rodriguez eventually moves his way up. We'll talk about all of that at the end as far as what I would like to see more from Junto Nakatani. But what I will say is this. As far as the stakes, when you have the IBF and the WBC belt on the line, to me, those are probably the two most important belts in boxing. So when you have those on the line, I do think it's important. When you have two Japanese fighters who are undefeated, I also think that's important. And both of these guys came together, they made the fight happen, and Junto Nakatani took over and he won the fight. So, in my opinion, the stakes were big. I'm giving it an 8.5. And also, I do believe that Junto Nakatani can gain a lot from this, which will transfer to the impact side. Now, for me, the impact, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm going to give it an 8. And the reason why I'm going to give it an 8 is because now, since we have Junto Nakatani as a unified champion, I believe it's time to start rising him above the 8 to 10 range on the pound for pound list. I believe Junto Nakatani is either five or borderline number five on that pound for pound list after this fight. You beat a champion, you beat him, you took his belt. This was a guy who was 10 and 0, he was in his prime. You beat him, you took his belt. So now you have two belts. On top of that, you're one of the bigger names in the lighter divisions. Obviously, you're up there with Inoue. Inoue is on a level of his own. Obviously, he's a top 1 to 3 pound for pound fighter, at worst number three. So you're not there yet. But we're talking about the layer divisions. There's three guys that I think of, and that's Inoue, that's Bam Rodriguez, and that's Junto Nakatani. And I believe that because Junto Nakatani's name is in that category, is in that conversation, we got to put him higher on the pound for pound list. I mean, this is a guy who's 31 and 0, five straight knockouts that he's had in a row. He seems unstoppable in the divisions that he's fighting. He's a three-division champion. It's time that we put Junto Nakatani either in the top five or borderline top five, and it's time we start making these super fights with him happen. So as far as the impact, I'm gonna give it an 8. Now you might be asking why not anywhere higher than an 8? Well, for me, the reason why is because the pound for pound is looking scary right now, especially when you get past like the seventh spot and on. Once you get to like 6 and 1, it gets really, really scary. And the impact to me, there's nothing guaranteed in the future to happen. For all we know, Junto Nakatani could be facing another tomato can. And I don't want to see that. I want to start seeing Junto Nakatani fight guys that are going to be challenges for him. Like I said, I haven't seen Junto Nakatani tested. And I thought maybe, it was a possibility, it was a chance that Nishida would be the guy to test him. He was going to outbox him. That didn't happen. So, with all that being said, now it's time to start seeing Junto Nakatani start fighting the big fights, the super fights. We need to see what he does when he fights a guy with an equal skill as him or a guy who is willing to test him and put him in the deep waters. We got to see what Nakatani's made of. But we don't know what's going to happen next. So, with that being said, as far as impact, I got to give it an 8. And so when you add that all up, the average for this fight is a 7.75. This is the first fight that we have graded for season five. So obviously it's number one right now. Do I think it's going to stay number one? Most likely not. But what I will say is this is a good place to have it, in my opinion. 7.75. It was a relatively entertaining fight. It wasn't anything too crazy that I would go and tell my friends about. I do believe the stakes were high. I do believe that the strategies were all right. They were decent. And then last but not least, the impact. I believe that it does impact Nakatani as far as legacy, as far as his resume and everything like that. But the impact can't go any further from there because we don't know what's next for Nakatani. So with that being said, what would be next? Everybody's been begging for Naoya Inoue and Junto Nakatani. And I made a very, very hot take in my prediction episode. I said that I believe as of right now, Nakatani would beat Naoya Inoue. And I'm standing on that hill. I love Naoya Inoue. I really do. But I do believe as of right now, Nakatani could beat Inoue. Now, does that mean I'm correct? Possibly not. And the reason why I say that is because, again, we haven't seen Junto Nakatani tested. We haven't seen him go up against some of those real legit champions. I do believe when you look at resume, obviously Inoue's resume is a lot better. But from what I've seen so far, Inoue is slowly and slowly starting to show some weaknesses. Nakatani is not. Nakatani is going in there and he's just dominating guys. But what Inoue is showing me is that he has the ability that when he gets knocked down, he gets back up and he'll just dominate. I got to see that from Nakatani. I haven't seen Nakatani go up against somebody who can test him like that. And so that's going to be the real test. That's going to be the real question for me is when Nakatani is tested, can he fight back? Can he battle back? And we're going to have to wait and see. We're going to have to see if somebody can do that to him. But what's next for Nakatani, in my opinion? I mean, there's still two guys, again, you can go after Takai or you can go after Susumi. You can go after one of those two guys and try to get more belts in that 118-pound division. But I'm just saying this right now. I can't see Nakatani dropping back down to 115, so that's not going to happen. You go up to the next division, and the only guy there is Inoue. So, in my opinion, there's only three guys that you could fight that would make sense, and that's Takai, that's Susumi, and that's Inoue. Those are the only three guys I could see you fighting, unless somehow Jesse Rodriguez decides to jump up a little bit and decide to cut the line and fight you, but I can't see that happening either. And Jesse Rodriguez obviously has a fight coming up in a little bit, so or next month, I believe, and we'll definitely cover that fight when it comes. But what I will say is those are the three fights to me that make sense for Nakatani. As far as which one I would rather see first, obviously we would all rather see Naoya Inoue versus Junto Nakatani. That's a super fight right there. However, the fight that makes more sense as of right now is I believe that he should go in there and he should fight Susumi. And the reason why I say that is because I need to see him fight Susumi because I believe Susumi is a good enough boxer that could definitely give him the credibility that he deserves. Nishida was great. Nishida's good. Don't get me wrong. 10 and 0, but the knockouts weren't there. He only had two knockouts. What I see from Susumi is the type of guy that I think is going to put Nakatani in some positions that he's not going to feel comfortable with. And we got to see what Nakatani does to react to that. And I believe Susumi is the just the right opponent to give him that credibility if he wins. To be like, okay, we knew Nakatani was legit, but this confirms it. And I believe that that would be the next fight that come. And plus, you collect another belt on top of that. If you want to go and fight Takai and become undisputed, then that obviously would shoot Nakatani's fame into the air, and then you can make the fight with Naoya Inoue. But again, I wouldn't be opposed if they decided to do Nakatani versus Inoue regardless. So we're gonna have to wait and see. Obviously, there's plans to continue to have Inoue fighting in the United States. Obviously, he has a little bit of a deal with Turkey Al Sheikh in Saudi Arabia, so there's no doubt in my mind that we'll see him in Saudi Arabia someday. But I would really like to see Nakatani and versus Inoue. However, I do want to see Nakatani fight Susumi first just to see if he can handle being put in deep waters. I believe Susumi can do that. And if he goes in there and he dominates Susumi, then I mean, we got to make that fight with Inoue because at that point, Inoue and Nakatani, those are the only two guys that can combat each other as of right now. I mean, but then again, we're gonna have to wait and see. Overall, I was very pleased with the way Inoue fought. I really thought he did an amazing job. I thought he was the aggressor for most of the fight. I thought that he did a very good job with those power punches. It just seemed like every single time he threw a hook or he threw an uppercut and he would land on Nishida, Nishida just decided to crumble. There was really nothing he could do. He tried to fight back as best as he can, but when you're in there with somebody like Nakatani who has the power that he does, and you're in there with somebody like Nakatani who is as precise as he is, there's not much you can do in that instance. There's not much you can do to combat that. And like I said, if you can't push the pace against Nakatani, he's going to make you conform to what he is doing. And that's exactly what he did with Nishida. As far as Nishida, I mean, keep your head up. Again, you lost to a top 10 pound for pound fighter right now. And Junto Nakatani is no joke. I don't know what's next for Nakatani. I don't know if he shoots up to 122. I don't know if he stays here at 118 and tries to collect more belts. But I could see Nishida being back in the title picture for sure. I do think he is a good fighter. I just think this fight was more than he could chew. But with that being said, I say it's time for us to log off. Again, make sure y'all continue to tune into the Puncher's Point. Again, we're gonna keep on dropping bangers after bangers after bangers. We got special guests coming up on the podcast. Make sure y'all stay in tune for that. We got more predictions, more post fights, more news updates, all this type of stuff. We got more social media content. We got more collabs. So overall, season 5 is a new season, and I'm excited to say that this might be the best season yet. So with that being said, make sure y'all continue to tune into the Puncher's Point. Make sure y'all follow the social medias. Make sure y'all subscribe to the podcast, the YouTubes. And then last but not least, make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point.